The celestial abduction. Jackson Reed wiped down the same sticky spot on the counter for what felt like the 1,000th time that night. The clock above the dusty bottles of liquor read 3:17 a.m., and the rusty nail was finally empty. The last patron, a grizzled truck driver with more stories than teeth, had stumbled out 15 minutes ago. Another thrilling Friday night in the books, Jackson muttered to the empty bar. At 32, this wasn't where he'd imagined life would take him. A failing bar in a forgotten corner of Nevada, living in the apartment upstairs and nursing dreams that were collecting dust faster than the unused top-shelf whiskey. He flipped the rag over his shoulder and began counting the meager night's earnings. $217, barely enough to cover the electric bill, let alone the overdue rent. Jackson ran his fingers through his dark, disheveled hair and let out a sigh that carried the weight of years of disappointment. One more week, he promised himself. If things don't turn around in one more week, I'll... The air in the bar suddenly felt electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. The lights flickered, and a high-pitched hum filled the room. Jackson's skin prickled with goosebumps as a shimmer appeared in the center of the bar, like heat rising from asphalt. "What the hell?" he whispered, backing away until he hit the shelf of bottles, causing them to clink together nervously. The shimmer expanded, forming a swirling vortex of purple and silver light. The cash register drawer slammed shut on its own, and the bar stools began to rattle against the floor. "If this is about that gambling debt, Trevor, I told you I'd have it by." Jackson's words died in his throat as the vortex solidified into a beam of light that engulfed him completely. Every molecule in his body seemed to separate and rearrange itself. The sensation wasn't painful, but it wasn't pleasant either, like being turned inside out while simultaneously having every limb fall asleep. His vision blurred, and his ears popped as if descending rapidly in an airplane. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Jackson found himself face down on a smooth, cool surface that hummed with energy. The air smelled like ozone and something sweet, like caramelized sugar but with metallic undertones. His stomach lurched, and he fought back the urge to vomit. "Subject acquired," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was smooth and artificial, with no discernible gender or emotion. "Excellent," replied another voice, this one decidedly feminine and dripping with authority. "Vital signs. Stable, your luminescence. The human is in optimal physical condition, though his liver shows signs of moderate damage consistent with earthly alcohol consumption patterns." Jackson pushed himself up onto his hands and knees, his vision slowly returning. The floor beneath him was made of a material he'd never seen before, something between marble and glass that seemed to pulse with an inner light. He blinked several times, trying to make sense of his surroundings. He was in an enormous chamber with soaring ceilings that shifted colors like an aurora borealis. The walls curved organically, and there appeared to be no corners anywhere. Everything flowed into everything else. Strange symbols floated in the air, occasionally rearranging themselves. Where am I?" Jackson managed, his voice raspy and uncertain. "You are aboard the Stellar Sovereign, flagship of the Stellaris Empire," said the feminine voice. Jackson turned towards the sound and felt his jaw drop. Standing before him was the most beautiful and terrifying being he had ever seen. She, if she was the appropriate term, stood at least 7 feet tall, with skin the color of midnight that seemed to contain galaxies within it. Tiny points of light shifted and moved beneath her surface like stars. Her eyes were completely silver, with no discernible pupils, yet somehow conveyed a piercing intelligence. Atop her head was a crown that appeared to be made of pure energy, constantly shifting and reforming. "I am Queen Nyxara, sovereign of the 13 systems, keeper of the cosmic flame, and guardian of the void between stars," she announced, her voice resonating not just in Jackson's ears, but somehow inside his mind as well. "And you are Jackson Reed, proprietor of the Rusty Nail, a drinking establishment of little consequence on the backwater planet Earth." Jackson staggered to his feet, fighting to maintain his balance. "How do you know my name? Why am I here? Is this some kind of elaborate prank? Because if Todd put you up to this, I swear to God." "Silence," Nyxara commanded, and Jackson found his voice literally unable to continue. His mouth moved, but no sound emerged. "This is no deception or entertainment. You have been selected for a purpose of galactic significance." She glided forward, her feet seemingly not touching the floor, and circled Jackson like a predator assessing prey. Her flowing robes, made of a material that looked like liquid starlight, trailed behind her. For millennia, my kind has observed yours from afar. Humans are fascinating, so primitive in your technology, yet so complex in your emotions, so fragile physically, yet so resilient spiritually, so destructive, yet so creative. She stopped directly in front of Jackson and waved her hand. He felt his voice return to him like a physical force pushing up his throat. "You kidnapped me to tell me how interesting humans are?" Jackson asked, anger beginning to replace his fear. "Couldn't you have just watched some reality TV?" Unexpectedly, Nyxara's lips curved into what appeared to be a smile. "Your species' capacity for humor, even in dire circumstances, is one of your more intriguing qualities." She snapped her fingers, and a three-dimensional display appeared between them, showing Earth rotating slowly. "Your planet stands at a crossroads. In the coming century, you will either destroy yourselves or transcend your limitations to join the greater galactic community." The display zoomed in to show scenes of war, climate disasters, and technological advancements flashing in rapid succession. The Stellaris Council is divided on whether to intervene. Some believe your species is too dangerous to be allowed to spread beyond your solar system. Others see potential in your kind that might benefit us all. Jackson ran his hand through his hair, struggling to comprehend. "And what does any of this have to do with me? I'm a bartender with an overdue electric bill, not a world leader or scientist." Nyxara's silver eyes seemed to glow brighter. "That is precisely why you were chosen. We need someone unexceptional, someone who represents the true average of humanity." "Gee, thanks," Jackson muttered. "You will undergo a series of trials," Nyxara continued, ignoring his comment. "These tests will determine if humans possess the inherent qualities necessary for galactic citizenship. Your performance will decide the fate of your entire species." The weight of her words hit Jackson like a physical blow. "No pressure or anything," he said weakly, "and if I refuse—" Nyxara tilted her head, causing her energy crown to shimmer. "Refusal is, of course, your right. In that case, you will be returned to Earth with no memory of this encounter, and your planet's fate will be decided without human input." Jackson looked around the vast chamber, taking in the alien technology that surrounded him, the impossible being standing before him, and the stars visible through what appeared to be a transparent ceiling. Everything he thought he knew about the universe had been upended in the span of minutes. "Do I at least get a drink before these trials start?" he asked with a nervous laugh. Nyxara made a gesture, and a small floating orb appeared, offering a crystalline cup filled with a luminescent blue liquid. "The nectar of insight," she explained. "It will help your human mind comprehend what you are about to experience." Jackson took the cup cautiously. "Will it kill me?" "Only if you wish it to," Nyxara replied cryptically. Jackson sighed, looking at the strange liquid. "Well, I've served worse to customers at happy hour." He downed the contents in one gulp. Immediately, his senses expanded. Colors became more vivid, sounds more distinct. He felt as if he could perceive the very atoms that made up the ship around him. "Whoa," he breathed, "that's intense." "The first trial begins now," Nyxara announced, and the floor beneath Jackson suddenly disappeared. He found himself falling through a shaft of light, screaming as the walls around him blurred into streaks of color. The universe had dragged him from his ordinary life into something beyond imagination, and all he could do was fall, into the unknown, into destiny, into the stars themselves. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the fate of humanity fell with him. Trials of the stars. Jackson's stomach lurched as he plummeted through the luminous tunnel, his scream echoing off walls that seemed to be made of pure light. Just when he was certain he'd be falling forever, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, and his descent abruptly slowed. He found himself hovering a few feet above a circular platform before being gently deposited on its surface. "First trial, adaptability," announced Nyxara's voice from everywhere and nowhere. Jackson stood shakily, his heart hammering against his ribs. The chamber was enormous, with walls that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue. Suspended in the air were hundreds, perhaps thousands, of small, glowing orbs that pulsed like heartbeats. "Humans pride themselves on their ability to adapt to changing circumstances," Nyxara continued, materializing before him in a swirl of starlight. "Let us see how well you embody this trait." She raised one elegant hand, and the orbs began to move, swirling around the chamber in increasingly complex patterns. Jackson watched, mesmerized by their dance. The rules are simple, Nyxara explained. The orbs will form patterns. You must predict where they will converge and position yourself accordingly. Failure to do so will result in discomfort. Discomfort? Jackson asked nervously. What kind of discomfort are we talking about here? Paper cut or broken bones? Nyxara's lips curved in what might have been amusement. You will discover soon enough. Without further warning, the orbs suddenly accelerated, their movements becoming frenzied. Several of them began glowing more intensely, turning from blue to a bright gold. Jackson noticed they were forming a rough circle to his left. Acting on instinct, he leaped in that direction just as dozens of orbs converged on the spot where he'd been standing. A burst of energy crackled through the air, leaving the scent of ozone. That would have been unpleasant, Nyxara observed. You don't say, Jackson muttered, already scanning the chamber for the next pattern. For what felt like hours, he dodged, rolled, and sprinted across the platform as the orbs continued their relentless assault. His bartender's reflexes, honed by years of catching falling bottles and avoiding drunken swings, served him well. Still, he wasn't perfect. Several times, he misjudged a pattern or moved too slowly, resulting in painful jolts of energy that left his nerves tingling and his hair standing on end. By the time the orbs finally slowed and returned to their original positions, Jackson was drenched in sweat and gasping for breath. He collapsed onto one knee, his muscles trembling with exhaustion. Impressive, Nyxara said, gliding closer. Most subjects fail within the first few minutes. Most subjects, Jackson wheezed. How many others have you put through this cosmic obstacle course? You are the 47th human we have tested, she replied matter-of-factly. The previous 46 were inadequate. Jackson's blood ran cold. What happened to them? Nyxara waved her hand dismissively. They were returned to Earth, their memories adjusted. No harm came to them beyond wounded pride. Before Jackson could respond, the platform beneath him shifted, transforming into what appeared to be a transparent glass floor. Below, he could see the vastness of space, stars stretching infinitely in all directions. Second trial, creativity, Nyxara announced. Humans often boast of their innovative thinking, their ability to find solutions where none seem to exist. The glass floor separated into hundreds of floating panels, each about a foot square, forming a disjointed path across the chamber. Between the panels was nothing but the void of space. Cross to the other side, Nyxara instructed, gesturing to a glowing door that had appeared on the far wall at least 100 feet away. Jackson looked at the scattered panels with dismay. These won't hold my weight, he observed, cautiously testing one with his foot. It dipped alarmingly under even slight pressure. That is correct, Nyxara confirmed. Each panel will support your weight for exactly 1 second before it fails. Choose your path wisely. Jackson surveyed the chaotic arrangement of panels, his mind racing. There was no clear path, and even if he ran at full speed, he couldn't possibly cross all that distance in the limited time available. Is this even possible? He asked. That is for you to determine, Nyxara replied cryptically. Jackson closed his eyes, trying to think. The nectar of insight still flowed through his system, enhancing his perceptions. He could feel the hum of energy from the panels, the subtle vibrations that connected them to the ship's systems. His eyes snapped open as an idea formed. These panels are connected to the ship's gravitational system, aren't they? Nyxara's expression remained impassive, but Jackson sensed he was on the right track. He took a deep breath and jumped onto the first panel. As expected, it immediately began to sink under his weight, but instead of jumping to the next one, he deliberately stomped on it with all his strength. The panel plummeted downward, and as Newton's third law dictated, Jackson was propelled upward. Using the momentary weightlessness, he twisted in midair and directed himself toward another panel several feet away. Upon landing, he repeated the process, using each failing panel to launch himself further across the chamber. It was like playing a cosmic game of hopscotch where the consequences of failure were certain death. Yet somehow, Jackson found himself enjoying the challenge. Each leap carried him further, his trajectory becoming more confident as he learned to harness the ship's artificial gravity to his advantage. With a final, powerful jump, He sailed through the air and landed directly in front of the glowing door, stumbling but managing to stay upright. Nyxara appeared beside him, her silver eyes gleaming. Most interesting. You did not attempt to find a safe path, but instead embraced the inherent instability of the system. In my defense, Jackson said, still catching his breath, there wasn't a safe path to find. Precisely, Nyxara nodded. The test was not to find a solution that did not exist, but to create one using the limitations themselves as tools. The door slid open, revealing a smaller, more intimate chamber. Unlike the previous rooms with their grand, cosmic aesthetics, this one appeared almost cozy. A table sat in the center, set with an assortment of objects that Jackson couldn't immediately identify. Final trial, compassion, Nyxara announced, gesturing toward the table. Your species is capable of both tremendous cruelty and remarkable kindness. This duality fascinates us. Jackson approached cautiously. The table held what appeared to be various medical tools, along with several vials of colorful liquids, and a container that pulsed with a soft, organic light. Within this container is a life form, Nyxara explained. It is dying. The tools before you can be used to save it or to hasten its demise. The choice is yours. Jackson stared at the container, then back at Nyxara. What's the catch? What do I get if I save it? What do I get if I don't? That is not information I can provide, she replied. You must decide based solely on your own moral compass. Frowning, Jackson opened the container. Inside was a small creature that resembled a cross between a jellyfish and a kitten. Its translucent body pulsed weakly with diminishing light, and it emitted a soft, pitiful sound that tugged at Jackson's heart. He examined the tools on the table. Some were clearly designed for precision work, delicate forceps, tiny scalpels, what appeared to be a microscopic suturing device. Others were more ambiguous in purpose, with sharp edges and ominous-looking attachments. The vials, meanwhile, were labeled in a script Jackson couldn't read. He picked one up, a bright green liquid that seemed to glow from within, and uncorked it cautiously. The scent that wafted out reminded him of freshly cut grass after rain, unexpectedly pleasant. I don't even know what this creature needs, Jackson protested. I'm not a doctor, I'm barely a competent first aid provider. The solution is before you, Nyxara said. Trust your instincts. Jackson looked again at the suffering creature. It had curled one of its tentacle-like appendages around his finger, as if pleading for help. Despite its alien appearance, the gesture was unmistakably one of trust. With a sigh, Jackson set to work. He had no idea what he was doing, but he couldn't bear to walk away, nor could he bring himself to end the creature's life. Instead, he began methodically testing the vials, placing a tiny drop of each on his fingertip and gently touching it to different parts of the creature's body, watching for reactions. When the purple vial produced a slight brightening of the creature's inner light, Jackson grew more confident. He used the precision tools to carefully extract a small, dark object that seemed to be causing the creature discomfort, then applied more of the purple liquid to the wound. For nearly an hour, he worked with focused determination, combining different liquids, using the tools with increasing dexterity, and all the while speaking softly to the creature in soothing tones, the same voice he used to calm down belligerent drunks at the bar. Finally, the creature's light stabilized, glowing with a steady, healthy luminescence. It made a chirping sound that somehow conveyed gratitude, then curled up in Jackson's palm, apparently falling asleep. You succeeded, Nyxara observed, her voice softer than before. Despite having no knowledge of xenobiology, no instructions, and no guarantee of reward. Jackson carefully placed the sleeping creature back in its container. Was there really any other choice? I couldn't just let it suffer. Nyxara studied him with unreadable silver eyes. Many before you have made different decisions. Some sought the most efficient solution, a quick death. Others refused to engage at all, fearing a trap. Well, I'm not them, Jackson said simply. He felt drained, physically and emotionally exhausted by the trials. No, Nyxara agreed. You are not, and that, Jackson Reed, is why you have passed all 3 trials. The chamber dissolved around them, reforming into the grand throne room where they had first met. Jackson noticed several other beings now present, aliens of various forms, all watching him with expressions he couldn't begin to interpret. The Council of 13, Nyxara explained, noticing his gaze. They have observed your trials and will help determine your fate, and by extension, the fate of your species. One of the council members stepped forward, a being that appeared to be made entirely of flowing water contained within a humanoid force field. Its voice bubbled like a mountain stream. The human shows promise, but a single specimen cannot represent an entire species. What proof do we have that this one is not an anomaly? An excellent point, Counselor Thallam, Nyxara acknowledged, which is why we must proceed to the next phase. Jackson felt his heart sink. Next phase? You said there were only 3 trials. Nyxara turned to him, and for the first time he saw something like compassion in her silver eyes. The trials were merely to determine if you were worthy of the true challenge, Jackson Reed. Now, we must see if you can serve as a bridge between our worlds. You must become more than a representative of humanity. You must become a ruler of stars. The council members murmured among themselves, some nodding in agreement, others gesturing in what appeared to be protest. Wait, Jackson said, holding up his hands. You want me to be some kind of, what, ambassador, galactic politician? I can barely manage a failing bar in Nevada. Perhaps that is precisely why you are suited for this role, Nyxara replied. You understand struggle, you comprehend failure. You have lived among the common people of your world, not isolated in halls of power. She stepped closer, her starlit robes swirling around her in cosmic patterns. And most importantly, you have demonstrated the qualities we seek: adaptability in the face of chaos, creativity when confronted with impossible choices, and compassion without expectation of reward. Jackson stared at her, speechless. His entire life had been a series of small disappointments and modest failures, punctuated by brief moments of happiness that never seemed to last. And now, in the span of a few hours, he had been thrust into a position of potentially saving, or dooming, all of humanity. What exactly do you want me to do? He finally asked. Nyxara raised her hand, and a holographic image appeared, a massive space station orbiting Earth, invisible to human detection systems. From this outpost, you will work alongside me, learning our ways while teaching us yours. Together, we will determine if Earth is ready to join the greater galactic community. Your insights will guide our policies, your reactions will inform our understanding. She paused, her silver eyes locked with his. In essence, Jackson Reed, you will become my consort in governing the stars. The word consort hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that made Jackson's pulse quicken. He studied Nyxara's alien yet undeniably regal beauty, feeling an unexpected attraction that transcended species. And if I accept this role, he said carefully, what guarantees do I have that Earth will be treated fairly, that my people will be protected? You will have a seat on the council, Nyxara replied. Your voice will carry equal weight to mine in all matters concerning Earth. No decision regarding your planet will be made without your consent. It was an offer beyond anything Jackson could have imagined: power, purpose, and protection for his world. Yet the weight of such responsibility was terrifying. As if sensing his thoughts, Nyxara added, You need not decide immediately. Rest, recover from your trials. Consider all that you have learned and all that is being offered. Jackson nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted he truly was. The adrenaline that had carried him through the trials was fatting, leaving him bone-weary. Just one question, he said as Nyxara turned to leave. Why me? Out of billions of humans, why choose a bartender from nowhere? Nyxara paused, looking back over her shoulder. Perhaps because among the stars, Jackson Reed, everyone comes from nowhere, and everywhere is somewhere to someone. With those cryptic words, she glided away, leaving Jackson alone with his thoughts and the impossible choice before him. Return to his ordinary life on Earth, or embrace a destiny among the stars as consort to an alien queen. And as he stared out at the cosmos visible through the chamber's transparent ceiling, Jackson couldn't help but wonder if his failing bar in Nevada had prepared him, in some small way, for the greatest role of his life.